Welcome the anointed ones. The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Oscar Wilde. For years, you've been the quiet storm, holding a truth so potent it could reshape their world. They mocked, doubted, and dismissed you, waving off your foresight as fantasy. And yet, here we are. The moment they finally realize, you've known this the entire time. Studies show that humans often reject inconvenient truths out of sheer discomfort, clinging to ignorance like it's a life raft. But ignorance isn't bliss. It's borrowed time. Now, the very people who called you delusional are piecing it together like a bad detective in a cheap mystery novel. And guess what? You were always 10 steps ahead. Their awkward stares and forced smiles scream one thing. Wait, have we been the fools this whole time? Yes, they have. But don't worry, watching them squirm might just be the best entertainment you've had all year. Number 1. The curse of being ahead of your time. The hardest part about being ahead of your time is knowing that people will reject you, not because you're wrong, but because you're too far ahead for them to understand. It's not that they don't see what you see, it's that they can't. Your insights challenge the world they're comfortable living in, and that makes you a threat. People cling to their illusions like lifelines, and when you bring a truth that could shatter those illusions, it's easier for them to laugh at you, mock you, or call you crazy than to face what you're offering. This rejection isn't personal, even though it feels like it is. It's fear disguised as ridicule. Fear of change. Fear of being wrong. Fear that everything they've built their identity on might be a lie. And when you stay consistent, when your truth doesn't waver, even in the face of their scorn, they can't ignore it forever. Time does its work. Reality catches up. When that moment comes and they finally realize you were right all along, it hits them like a tidal wave. The shame, the regret, the bitterness, they don't just feel foolish for doubting you, they feel betrayed by themselves for not seeing it sooner. And here's the twist. Deep down, a part of them always knew you were right. They just weren't ready to admit it, even to themselves. Now, they scrambled to rewrite the narrative, pretending they were never against you or acting like it was obvious all along. But the truth lingers. The person they dismissed, the one they underestimated, you were always the one holding the answers. And as they try to reconcile the past with the present, one thing becomes painfully clear. Their disbelief didn't stop the truth. It only delayed their understanding. Number 2, the power of silent confidence. There's a unique power in silence, especially when you know the truth. While others are busy shouting over each other, trying to prove how much they know, you've stayed quiet, not out of doubt, but out of certainty. You didn't need to convince anyone because deep down you understood that the truth doesn't need defending. It only needs time. That silent confidence, the kind that comes from knowing exactly what's going on while everyone else scrambles, is unsettling to people. It challenges their need for validation. In a world addicted to noise, silence is intimidating. Your quiet presence, paired with the weight of your knowledge, unsettled them more than any argument ever could. They couldn't figure you out, and that bothered them. People don't like what they can't explain, and your calm in the face of their chaos felt like a riddle they didn't know how to solve. So instead of admitting they might be missing something, they dismissed you. But now that time has caught up. They're starting to see the cracks in their loud certainty. They're realizing that the silence they mocked was actually strength. The patience they mistook for indifference was you watching them learn the hard way. And here's the twist. They resent you for it. Not because you were wrong, but because you didn't try to prove them wrong. It's a tough pill to swallow when someone who stayed in their lane ends up being the one who had it figured out all along. They realize that while they were chasing applause, you were quietly winning. And now as they look back, they're haunted by one thought. Maybe if they'd listened to the quiet one, they wouldn't feel so lost now. Number 3, knowledge they mocked, now they seek. The most ironic thing about being dismissed is that the same people who laughed at you eventually come back, not with apologies but with questions. The knowledge they once mocked is now what they desperately need. At first it's almost amusing to watch the shift, the arrogance melting into confusion, the skepticism turning into curiosity. But there's something deeper at play. They didn't just reject what you knew, They rejected the idea that someone like you could know it. It's not that your insights were flawed. They just couldn't accept that you had clarity while they stumbled in the dark. Their mockery wasn't about you being wrong. It was about their inability to understand. And now that the truth is undeniable, they feel the sting of realizing they wasted so much time ignoring the very person who had the answers all along. The awkwardness comes when they try to act like they've always respected you, as if the past never happened. They might try to ease into it with casual questions, pretending it's no big deal. But you can see the shift, the way their voices carry a hint of hesitation, a silent admission of guilt. They wouldn't say it outright, but their actions betray them. They're learning slowly that your intuition wasn't luck, and your insights weren't guesses. What they don't realize is that you're not angry at them. You never needed their validation in the first place, but watching them scramble to make sense of it now, it's bittersweet. Part of you wants to say, "I told you so," but the bigger part knows it's not necessary. They already know. And as they rely on the very knowledge they once ridiculed, you understand the deeper truth. Their doubt was never your problem. It was their lesson to learn. Number 4, the burden of the all-seeing eye. Knowing too much too soon is a heavy burden, one that most people can't understand. It's not a gift, it's a weight you carry alone. When you see things for what they truly are, when you understand the patterns, the motives, the outcomes before they even unfold, it doesn't make you feel powerful. It makes you feel alienated. The world around you operates on illusions and surface-level thinking. And when you pierce through that, people don't see you as insightful. They see you as a threat. It's not just that they don't believe you. It's that they can't handle what you're saying. The truth you bring isn't gentle. It forces them to confront realities they've spent years avoiding. They call you dramatic, paranoid, or even delusional, not because you're wrong, but because you make them uncomfortable. Their ignorance isn't accidental, it's willful. Ignorance lets them sleep at night, while your knowledge keeps you awake. Over time, you learn to stop sharing. You've seen the way their eyes glaze over, the way they scoff and roll their eyes, clinging to their false sense of security. You realize that no matter how much you want to help, you can't save people from truths they refuse to face. So, you carry it alone, pretending you don't see what you see, pretending it doesn't hurt to watch them stumble toward inevitable consequences. But when the moment comes when reality hits them like a freight train and they finally grasp what you've known all along, it's not satisfying. It's bittersweet. You don't feel vindicated, you feel exhausted. Because being right doesn't undo the loneliness you felt while they rejected you. It doesn't erase the burden of seeing the truth long before anyone else was ready to face it. Number 5. Fools play checkers. You played chess. While they were busy chasing quick wins, caught up in the thrill of instant gratification, you were working with precision and patience. They saw life as a series of short-term moves, reacting impulsively to the moment without considering the bigger picture. But you were playing chess while they were fumbling with checkers. You didn't just see the next step, you saw the chain reaction, the ripples spreading far beyond what they could comprehend. They mocked your restraint, mistaking it for hesitation. They laughed at your strategy, convinced their shortcuts and flashy moves would put them ahead. What they didn't realize was that every impulsive decision they made was setting the stage for their own downfall. They weren't just playing poorly. They didn't even understand the rules of the game they were in. As time went on, the difference became glaringly obvious. Their small wins didn't add up to anything meaningful, while your deliberate moves built momentum. You anticipated their mistakes before they even knew they were making them. And now they're stuck, trapped in a position they can't escape, a checkmate entirely of their own making. The beauty of it all, you didn't have to rush or prove anything. While they wasted energy scrambling, you stayed calm, confident in your long-term vision. And now that the board is clear, they see it too. They weren't just playing the wrong game. They were playing against someone who was always 5 steps ahead. The realization stings, not just because they lost, but because they underestimated you. They thought you were being overly cautious, when in reality you were building a strategy they couldn't even begin to grasp. Now they're left to pick up the pieces of their impulsiveness while you move on, having already won the game they never even understood. Number 6. The painful gift of foresight. Foresight is often romanticized as a gift, but in reality it's a double-edged sword. Seeing what's coming before anyone else does isn't empowering, it's isolating. You carry the weight of knowing what could be avoided, watching as others walk blindly into mistakes you've already warned them about. They dismiss your insights, brushing you off as overly cautious, dramatic, or even pessimistic, and yet every step they take confirms what you already knew. The cost of their ignorance isn't just theirs to bear, it's yours too. You're left to endure the frustration of seeing time wasted, doors closed, and lessons postponed. You could have helped them avoid it all, but they refuse to listen. Every missed opportunity feels like watching a house burn down, knowing you had the water to put it out, but no one believed you had the hose. What they'll never understand is that foresight isn't painless. It doesn't come with a sense of superiority or satisfaction. It comes with scars, emotional ones, from carrying the weight of truths no one else was ready to face. It's the loneliness of standing in a room full of people and realizing they won't believe you until it's too late. It's the exhaustion of seeing how much could have been saved if only they had trusted you. Now that reality has caught up with them, they're scrambling to piece together what they lost. They see it now, the time, the opportunities, the lessons they ignored, and they regret it. But for you, their awakening is bittersweet. While they're just beginning to feel the sting of what's been wasted, you've been carrying it all along. The painful irony? You weren't just ahead of them in knowledge. You were ahead of them in grief, mourning what could have been long before they even knew what was at stake. Number 7. Their ego was the enemy, not you. The truth wasn't the issue, it was who it came from. You could have handed them the clearest roadmap, the simplest solution, or the most undeniable facts, but their ego wouldn't allow them to accept it. It wasn't that they couldn't see it, it was that they couldn't handle the idea of you being right. To admit you were right would mean admitting they were wrong, and their pride just couldn't take that hit. Instead, they chose to reject you, not because your insights were flawed, but because their arrogance demanded it. To them, accepting your truth felt like giving up control, like acknowledging you were ahead of them. They couldn't stomach the thought that someone they underestimated had a perspective sharper than their own, so they dismissed you, not realizing that in doing so, they were setting themselves up for a fall. Now, as reality catches up, their pride is the only thing left in their way. They can no longer deny the truth you stood by, and the humiliation stings. It's not just about being wrong, it's about knowing they were wrong about you. The walls they built to protect their egos have crumbled, leaving them exposed. They realize now that their arrogance wasn't strength, it was their weakness all along. And here you are, standing steady, just as you were before. You don't need their validation, and that only makes it harder for them. They have to swallow the bitter pill of knowing that their pride blinded them, not just to the truth, but to the person who could have guided them to it sooner. Their ego was the enemy they never saw coming, and now they're left to wrestle with the consequences of their own misplaced arrogance. Number 8. The mirage of superiority shattered. For the longest time they carried themselves as though they were untouchable. They looked down on you, mistaking your patience for weakness, your humility for lack of ambition. To them, their loud confidence was proof of their superiority, but now the mirage has shattered, and the truth is impossible to ignore. What they thought was control was nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion. Their certainty wasn't built on solid ground. It was propped up by insecurity and the desperate need to feel important. They paraded their so-called achievements, compared themselves to you at every turn, and convinced themselves they were always a step ahead. But that's the thing about illusions. They only last as long as no one looks too closely. Now the facade is crumbled. They see that what they mistook for your weakness was actually quiet strength. While they wasted energy posturing and pretending, you were building something real. You weren't competing with them because you were never playing the same game. And now they're standing still, realizing they weren't ahead of you. They were running in circles, fooling themselves. The bitter part isn't just that they were wrong. It's that they see how obvious it was all along. They see now that their arrogance blinded them to what was right in front of them. And the hardest pill to swallow? You never needed to tear them down or expose them. Their insecurities did all the work for you. The truth is undeniable. They were never superior. They just thought they were because they couldn't see beyond their own egos. Now, exposed and vulnerable, they're left with the uncomfortable realization that the person they underestimated was never behind them. You were miles ahead the entire time. Number 9. Vindication feels bittersweet. There's a strange kind of satisfaction in watching someone finally come to the realization that you were right all along. It's the validation you've waited for, the proof that your instincts weren't just wild guesses, but truths they couldn't see until it was too late. The smiles, the apologies, the awkward attempts to explain themselves, it's all a little bittersweet. Yes, you're vindicated, but there's a sharp edge to it, a quiet ache that comes from knowing how much could have been avoided. If only they had listened when you first spoke, if only they hadn't brushed you off as too much or too different. So much pain, so much chaos, so many opportunities lost. It didn't have to be this way. The path they're now walking is one they chose through ignorance, stubbornness, and pride, and while it's satisfying to see them finally admit they were wrong, that satisfaction is quickly tempered by the realization that their mistakes were never about you. They didn't ignore you because you were wrong. They ignored you because they couldn't face the truth, and that hurt you more than anything. The hardest part is that you saw it all coming, the pitfalls, the setbacks, the dead ends, and you wanted to help, to guide them toward a better way. But you couldn't make them listen, couldn't force them to see what they weren't ready for. Now, as they scramble to put the pieces back together, you can't help but wonder how different things could have been if they'd trusted you, if they'd been open to your perspective. Vindication is sweet, but the price is heavy. Watching someone else pay for what could have been prevented, knowing you carried the solution all along, leaves you with a hollow feeling. The truth is, it never had to come to this, and that's the part that stings the most. Number 10. The fear of you was always the root. The truth they couldn't face had nothing to do with you. It was about what you represented. You were a mirror to everything they refused to acknowledge about themselves. You weren't just offering knowledge or wisdom, you were offering the potential for change, for growth, for the dismantling of the comfort they built their lives around. And that, more than anything, terrified them. It wasn't that they didn't understand what you were saying. It was that they feared what it would mean if they accepted it. You weren't just challenging their opinions, you were challenging their entire way of life, the lies they told themselves to avoid uncomfortable truths. The stability they relied on was fragile, built on denial and avoidance, and you, by simply existing and speaking the truth, became the catalyst that threatened it all. Their resistance wasn't ignorance, it was self-preservation. The more you spoke, the more they recoiled. They didn't want to hear it because listening meant they would have to face the consequences of their own actions, confront the lies they told themselves, and take accountability for the choices they made. And that's what they feared the most. The idea that they weren't as in control as they thought, that their carefully constructed world was based on shaky ground. So, they rejected you. They dismissed your wisdom, belittled your insights, and pushed you aside, not because they didn't see the truth, but because embracing it meant undoing everything they'd built. They feared what you represented, transformation, truth, and a challenge to their ego. But in doing so, they only delayed their reckoning. The fear of facing the truth about themselves was stronger than any rational thought, and in the end, it was that fear that made them blind to the very wisdom that could have set them free. Number 11. They never understood the cost of truth. The truth you carried wasn't just a matter of knowledge. It was a sacrifice, a weight that no one else seemed to understand. It wasn't something you chose lightly. It was something that came with cost. While they lived in comfortable ignorance, You were alone with the consequences of seeing what they couldn't. You endured ridicule from those who mocked your caution and solitude, from those who couldn't bear the weight of your clarity. You stood firm in your truth, but at what cost? The emotional toll, the isolation, the constant second-guessing. It wasn't easy. You didn't just know the truth, you felt it, long before anyone else was ready to face it. And now, as they scramble to catch up to what you've known all along, they're beginning to feel the burden themselves. The very truth they dismissed is knocking on their door, forcing them to confront what they didn't want to see. They're learning in real time that knowing the truth isn't a gift, it's a responsibility. It's not just about being right, it's about carrying the weight of that truth through thick and thin, even when no one else sees or understands, but they're unprepared for it. They never had to endure the ridicule, the isolation, or the internal battle of carrying a truth that didn't fit the world around them. They didn't realize that with great knowledge comes even greater loneliness. Now that they're faced with the harsh realities, they're overwhelmed. The emotional cost they're paying now, the regret and frustration, it's only the beginning of what you've already lived through. The burden of truth was never light, but you bore it in silence, while they were blissfully unaware of the weight they would one day carry. And now, as they try to catch up, they realize too late that the truth was never just about knowing, it was about enduring. Number 12. Now, they can't unsee it. The most unsettling consequence of realizing the truth is that it doesn't allow for retreat. Once the veil is lifted, there's no going back to the comfort of ignorance. That's what they're grappling with now. Not just the weight of the truth itself, but the loss of the illusions they clung to for so long. You didn't just show them the truth, you shattered their safe little world where denial kept them insulated. They can't unsee it. The lies they told themselves, the excuses they made, the justifications they leaned on, they're all transparent now. They see how they deceived themselves to avoid accountability, how they mocked you to shield their own insecurities, how they chose ignorance because it was easier than change. And now there's nowhere to hide. The truth you revealed wasn't just about the world, it was about them, their flaws, their fears, their failures. What makes it worse for them is knowing that this change wasn't on their terms. You didn't force them to accept it, but your presence, your persistence, your refusal to back down made it impossible for them to look away forever. They see now what you've always known, but instead of feeling empowered, they feel exposed. Their inability to deny the truth anymore makes them feel foolish, not because they were wrong, but because they spent so much time fighting against the inevitable. Now they're left to navigate a world where every comforting lie has been stripped away. And while they may grow stronger for it in the long run, the immediate sting of facing themselves and realizing they could have done so much sooner is what haunts them the most. They didn't just lose their ignorance, they lost the illusion of control, and that's a truth they'll carry forever. In the end, being the chosen one isn't about basking in the spotlight or relishing in vindication. It's about the quiet, unwavering strength it takes to carry truths others aren't ready to face. It's about the loneliness of seeing the world as it truly is, while others remain trapped in comforting illusions. And when they finally catch up, when they realize the depth of your understanding, the weight of your foresight, it won't feel like a victory. It'll feel like a release, a quiet acknowledgement that you were right, but at a cost you've already paid. So, let them catch up. Let them realize the truth they ignored, the opportunities they lost, and the choices that could have saved them. You don't need their validation anymore. They may now see the world as you always have, but they can't unsee the mistakes they made along the way. The road you walked alone was never easy, but in the end, you'll find peace in knowing that while they were blinded by their egos and fears, you were always moving forward, quietly, patiently, and steadily ahead. Because in the end, the truth wasn't just your burden to bear, it was your strength, your resilience, and your quiet rebellion against a world too scared to see. And as they scramble to catch up, you'll stand, not in triumph, but in quiet acknowledgement. You knew all along. And that's all that ever really mattered. If you've resonated with the truth in these words, then don't let this moment slip by. This journey of insight, Growth and self-discovery is just beginning, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. So hit that subscribe button, join the tribe, and let's keep uncovering the truths that others won't dare face. This is where the real conversations happen, the ones that make you question, learn, and grow. Don't just watch from the sidelines. Be part of the movement. Subscribe now and let's dive even deeper into what others are too afraid to see. You've already found the path. Let's walk it together. God bless you.